The time you came into the world carries a code of the soul. Have you ever stopped to think about it? What if the instant you were born wasn't random? What if there was a bigger, silent, hidden, but deeply true meaning behind the moment you first took your breath? Carl Jung believed that the soul chooses its path. That birth is more than biology. It is a symbolic alignment between the outer world and the inner world. And maybe, because of this, the exact time you arrived here says a lot about you. About who you are. About what he came to do. This idea is not mystical in the ordinary sense. It is profound. It's psychological. Jung saw time as a stage where the soul dances, and where every step has meaning. Do you feel like you have something in you that you have never been able to explain? A call, a restlessness, a sensitivity that no one sees? Perhaps the answer lies in this code. And in this video, we're going to explore it. Get ready, because by understanding the time when you came into the world, you may be beginning to decipher the invisible map of your soul. Most of us believe that we were born simply because our parents decided to do so or because chance determined it. But what if there's a deeper truth behind it? What if the time, day, month, and even the historical context in which you were born reveal a more inner, soul-shaped enigma? Carl Jung invites us to see birth not as an isolated biological event, but as part of a larger plan of the psyche. For him, the soul is a living reality with a will of its own. And she may well have chosen the ideal time to emerge into the physical world, not to meet the demands of the body, but to meet the needs of evolution itself. Think about the seasons, the cycles of nature. Nothing is born out of time. The seed does not sprout in winter. The sun does not shine brightly in the middle of the night. Each thing has its right moment. And the human being, with his psychic depth, is not outside of this. When you were born, something specific was happening. Perhaps there was silence in his house. Or chaos. Maybe it was raining. Maybe it was dawn. But more than the external setting, what mattered was the inner setting, the vibration of the world at that moment, and how it intertwined with what your soul needed to experience. There are those who say that we are born when we are ready. But Jung would say something more provocative. We are born when the world is ready to mirror us. And if your life seems to have been difficult from the beginning, maybe it's not a mistake. Perhaps his soul came precisely because he needed to learn to find himself in the midst of discomfort. How many times have you thought, why was I born into this family? In this country? At that time? The answer may lie in what you needed to live in order to mature. To become. Because the timing of birth doesn't just determine when you arrive. It shapes what you find. And what you find shapes who you are. You didn't come when you wanted to. He came when he needed it. When the world was a mirror. When the pains and joys that you would experience could give your soul the exact material to grow. And this is not punishment. It is wisdom. Therefore, looking at the moment of birth with more symbolic eyes is like opening a secret diary that your soul wrote before you even understood what it is to write. It's all there. The themes that would hurt you, the encounters that would heal you, the voids that would guide you. When you start to see it that way, life stops feeling unfair. It starts to seem precise, intelligent, instructed by something greater, by a force that cannot be seen with the eyes, but that is felt in the details, in the silences, in the right encounters at the right time. You were born because it was time to begin the journey. And the exact time was not accidental. It was symbolic. It was a password, the code, a silent message that your soul understands, even when your mind doesn't yet. You may have never stopped to reflect on the month you were born. Maybe it's just a date on the calendar, a number that repeats itself every year with cake, candles, and automatic messages on social networks. But according to the symbolic psychology that Carl Jung developed, this month is not just the beginning of his chronological count. He is a symbol, a portal. Jung believed that time carries hidden meanings. Not only the days and the hours, but also the larger cycles. The months, the seasons, the years. The world follows rhythms, and the soul seems to have a special sensitivity to these rhythms. Each month has a symbolic energy, an archetypal vibe. And the soul, at birth, enters through this portal, not only temporal, but also spiritual and psychic. Notice how the months carry specific characteristics. Not only in climatic terms, but culturally, emotionally, and symbolically. January, for example, is usually associated with beginnings, resolutions, changes. July, on the other hand, brings an air of pause, introspection, reevaluation. December carries an end, balance, memory. This is no coincidence. There are archetypes linked to each moment of the year, and when you are born in one of them, you carry the mark of that time within you. This does not mean that one month is better than the other. It is not about value, but about mission. Each period has qualities that favor certain learning, and your soul, by choosing to be born in that exact time interval, may be signaling what are the most important themes of your journey. Let's imagine that you were born in April, a month linked to rebirth, spring in many places around the world, and the force that breaks winter. Perhaps your soul came with a deep need to break away from old patterns, to bring life where there was stagnation before. It may be that you carry, even without knowing it, an inner strength to start over, and at the same time, a restlessness for everything that feels stopped. Someone born in September, on the other hand, may have been attracted to a time of harvest, analysis, and balance. Your soul may desire to observe more than to act, to ponder more than to be hasty. And for this reason, throughout life, your greatest challenges are linked to doubt, indecision, and the constant search for inner harmony. This is the hidden code we are talking about. It is not a superstition. It is a symbolic reading of time. Jung didn't say that the month determines your personality like a label, but rather that it can influence the challenges you will face and the gifts you will have to develop. It is as if the month were a gateway to a specific school. And you, as a student of the soul, enter that school not because someone forced you to, but because there were the lessons you most needed to learn. And since each soul is unique, what you will do with this learning will also be unique. When you discover what the symbolic energy of the month in which you were born is, you also begin to understand why certain issues are repeated in your life. Why do you feel certain anguish? Why some situations come back frequently, as if they were unfinished lessons? Maybe it's not bad luck. Perhaps it is the content of that matter that the soul has committed itself to study, and that, therefore, insists on returning until it becomes wisdom. The month is, then, more than a number. It is an invitation, a silent reminder. And every year, when your birthday approaches, it's not just the body that completes another cycle. It's the soul that gets a chance to recapture that code, to deepen that learning. You may begin to notice that in the days around your birthday, something changes in your inner state. A different tiredness, a greater sensitivity, a desire to be more alone or to change something profoundly. This is no coincidence either. It is as if the soul feels the call of the portal and prepares, once again, to cross it with more awareness. The good news is that you're not stuck with the month you were born. It doesn't limit you. On the contrary, it reveals you. It shows where its greatest strengths are, and also where its greatest resistance lies. By understanding this, you can stop fighting certain parts of yourself and start integrating them, to embrace them as part of his trajectory. That's the power of the symbol. It doesn't bind you, it sets you free. Jung said that what does not become conscious manifests itself as destiny. And perhaps, by understanding the portal of your birth, you are taking a step towards transforming unconscious destiny into a path lived with more clarity, more meaning, and more truth. Because the month you were born is not an external brand. It is a seed, a clue, a reflection of a silent decision that the soul made before you even knew what it was like to be born. Have you ever had the feeling of having met someone special, but at the wrong time? An intense connection, an inexplicable bond, a feeling of it was meant to be, but that, for some reason, couldn't happen? Or maybe you've had essential people in your life who arrived too soon, or too late. This, which so often seems unlucky, may have a deeper explanation. The soul finds the right people at the right time for its growth, even if that time seems wrong at first glance. Carl Jung understood human encounters not as chances, but as symbolic manifestations of the psyche. Each person who comes your way carries a reflection of their own soul. And these apparitions do not follow the logic of the common clock. They follow the inner time, the one that only the soul understands. When someone important arrives, early, it's because your soul needs to see something it's not ready to live yet, but it still needs to be touched, as if the encounter brings a reminder of what you will still be, or a warning of what you may lose if you don't grow up. These people come as early mirrors, showing parts of you that are still under construction. On the other hand, when someone arrives after the hour, there may already be a quiet maturity in you that has not been understood in the past. And this new presence brings with it reparation, the new beginning, not to relive what is past, but to live what may now be true, even if in a different way. The soul understands these arrivals and departures as lessons. They are not punishments, they are codes. And each person who enters your life carries a symbol, a key, a necessary provocation. Sometimes, the key it brings doesn't yet serve to open the door you want, but it serves to remind you that there is a door, that there is something beyond. How many of us cling to the idea that, if it were meant to be, it would have been? But Jung teaches us that life is symbolic. And that changes everything. Maybe it wasn't meant to be at that moment, not because love didn't exist, but because the soul needed to live detachment. Patience. The rebirth. You may have found great love when you didn't yet know how to love yourself. You may have crossed paths with a mentor when you didn't know how to listen yet. He may have lost a valuable friendship because he had not yet learned to value loyalty. That hurts, of course. But pain, in this context, is also a teacher. Life does not miss the address. People come because there is something to be seen, learned, felt. And many times, they are gone so that you can learn to continue with what remained. The learning, the awakening, the open wound that one day will become a scar, and then, strength. This perspective is not conformism. It is consciousness. It is to move from the question, why did this happen to me? And into the question, what did my soul need to do with this? Because, deep down, the time of the meetings is also a code. And when the soul chose to be born at that very moment, it knew that, later on, it would come across these figures, these souls, who would touch it in the most intimate and silent places. And this is not only true for love. It goes for everything. To the boss who humiliated you but pushed you to your true path. To the friend who betrayed you, but forced you to become more whole. To the distant relative who said a phrase that echoes to this day. They are fragments of destiny, pieces of a larger puzzle, which the soul recognizes even when the mind resists. There are those who think that they are always late or too early, that he missed chances, that let people pass. But when we look at it through Jung's eyes, we realize that time is not linear. It is symbolic. And perhaps the time error is in fact a soul hit. Because it's not just about what happened, it's about what it awakened in you. You may have lost someone, but you haven't lost what it taught you. He may not have stayed with the one he loved, but he kept the part of himself that only this love could reveal. And maybe that's exactly the meaning. The other came not to stay, but to shine a light on you. Light that you now carry. Light that has become yours. By recognizing this, the past gains another glow. Pain is no longer empty. The what-ifs turn into it was necessary. And the reunions, because yes, they happen, become even deeper. Because there is no longer a rush to arrest. There is only the desire to live with presence what time has finally allowed to flourish. Life has given you the right people. Even if, to the mind, it seemed like the wrong time. Because the soul does not work with the clock of reason. It follows the wake-up clock. And awakening sometimes requires encounters that don't complete each other, but that start a silent revolution within you. We live under the domination of time. The world revolves around schedules, deadlines, goals, birthdays, commemorative dates. Everything has an agenda. From a young age, we learn to measure our life based on how old we are, what grade we are in, what point in our career we should be at. But what if that time is just a shell? What if there is another time, more subtle, more true, that only the soul recognizes? Carl Jung believed that there is a dimension of the human being that does not follow chronological time. For him, the development of the soul, the process of individuation, as he called it, has its own rhythm. A mysterious rhythm, often contrary to what society expects of us. And this explains why so many people feel lost even though they have it all, or are behind even though they do everything right. The clock of the soul is not the same as the world's. While the world demands haste, productivity, performance, the soul whispers waiting, silence, maturation. And this mismatch can cause anguish. You may feel like you're falling behind, that everyone else is moving forward and you're standing still. But maybe you're exactly where you need to be, just in a time that isn't measured by external clocks. How many times have you felt pressured to be sure too soon? To get married, have children, make money, be successful? And how many times, as you followed this hurried path, did you feel a void that no achievement could fill? This happens because the soul is not convinced by meaningless achievements. She only eats for real, of presence, of meaning. And what is more curious, the time of the soul sometimes seems slow, until it doesn't seem like it anymore. There are times when she wakes up suddenly, in which everything changes in a week, in which something in you matures with a pain, with an encounter, with a revelation. And what has been dormant for years blooms as if it had been waiting for the right moment. It's like a seed under the ground. From the outside, no one sees anything. Everything seems to be at a standstill. But inside, something is reorganizing, taking root, preparing. And then, one day, without warning, it springs up. So is the soul. She respects her own cycles. And if you try to force it to bloom ahead of time, the result is frustration, tiredness, disconnection. How many people follow the script that the world has created and yet feel like they're living someone else's life? This is because following the time of the world, without listening to the time of the soul, is like walking with the feet of another. You move, but you do not advance. You do, but you don't feel it. You conquer, but you don't recognize yourself in any of it. The big challenge, then, is to stop measuring your life solely based on what others are doing. Comparison is one of the greatest traps of the soul, because it ignores internal time. It ignores that each one has a unique process. It ignores that, sometimes what you need now is not to move forward, but to stop, or retreat, or simply wait for something in you to organize itself in silence. Jung said that the greatest movements of the soul happen in darkness. In what society avoids. In the not knowing. In chaos. In the void. And that is why, so often, true spiritual awakening happens in crises. Because it is there that the time of the soul is revealed. When everything outside seems to collapse, something inside begins to rise. Have you ever felt like you were wasting time? Maybe it was, yes, but only from the perspective of the world. Because, from the perspective of the soul, that time may have been precious. It may have been the time of recollection, of pain that cleanses, of waiting that teaches. It may have been the interval necessary for something greater to be born in you. And the most beautiful thing about it all is that when you start living in the time of the soul, you realize that you are never late. Not even in advance. You're exactly where you need to be. And what is meant to be yours is not lost. He just hopes that you're ready, or that the world is ready to welcome you with maturity. Perhaps what you call delay is actually synchrony. Perhaps the delays that hurt you the most were deviations of the soul to protect you from what was not yet yours. Maybe that job that didn't work out, that relationship that ended, that chance that slipped away, were secret movements of the soul's time saying, not yet. And this is not passivity. It's smart delivery. It is deep listening. It is to live with your feet in the world and your eyes in your soul. Understanding that the truest time is not the one that runs outside, it is the one that pulsates within you. The soul is in a hurry for what matters. And calm down for what is not ready. Learning to listen to this time is one of the greatest freedoms you can conquer. Because then you stop running. And he starts walking. In your step. At your pace. In the sacred time that only your soul understands. The moment of his birth was just the beginning. One instant, among many, that began his story in time. But you are not limited to that moment. You are bigger. Much bigger. His birth was a door. A starter. But the soul is the one who goes through this door, and it brings with it much more than the body can carry. Carl Jung believed that the soul carries memories that go beyond time. That the deep unconscious holds images, impulses, and symbols that did not begin in you, but that live in you. This means that while the moment of birth is sacred, it does not define everything. It is a password, an entry code. But the mystery that you are goes far beyond that. You may have been born on an ordinary day. In any city. No special light in the sky, no apparent sign of greatness. But still, something invisible activated at that instant. The soul arrived with baggage that no one saw. With questions that they didn't even know were asked yet. With dormant powers. And with wounds that perhaps came from other times. That's why you've never felt fully explained by labels. By dates. By signs. By diagnoses. Because, as much as all of this helps to describe parts of you, none of it accounts for your whole. Nothing can define the mystery of being alive with consciousness, with history and with desire. You are a universe in motion. And the instant of birth is only the first chord of a complex symphony that reveals itself little by little, with each experience, with each pain, with each love. It's as if your soul were a book with chapters not yet written, and the birth, only the cover. From there, everything can change. And it changes. Because you grow. Learn. Misses. Governess. Falls. Raises. And in each of these stages, you become someone that not even the very moment of birth could predict. Because there is a profound freedom in the human being. A freedom to recreate oneself. To heal. To transform. Even if the birth code brings a direction, you can still choose the path. It is true that some traces of your birth will accompany you, like the background climate of your life, as a bass melody, but you can change the arrangement. You can choose other chords. You can tune or go out of tune, and then find yourself again. The soul is not rigid. It is alive, and it lives to grow. That's why self-knowledge is so essential. Not to get caught up in definitions, but to recognize their roots, and, from them, grow stronger. When you understand the instant you were born as a symbol, as an opening, you stop feeling limited by it. You begin to look at yourself with more love, more understanding, more freedom. Maybe you've spent years trying to fit into an image that wasn't yours. Maybe you believed that you needed to follow what was expected of you. But now, perhaps it's time to ask, who am I other than what I've been told I am? Who am I besides my date of birth, my profession, my last name? The answer is not out. It is not on ready-made maps. It's inside, and it reveals itself in silence, in listening, in diving. Carl Jung said that, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." And this awakening is the key to understanding that you are not a hostage to the instant you were born. You are the creator of your own narrative. You may have come into the world with inherited traits, but you can choose which ones you will grow and which you will transform. You may have started your life with painful stories, but you can decide what meaning you will give them. You may have carried weights that are not yours, but you can leave them now, because the instant of birth is only the seed. The tree you become depends on the light you seek, the water you offer, the roots you choose to put down. You are greater than the instant you were born because your soul is eternal, because his story doesn't end with labels. Because your heart still has a lot to feel, a lot to discover. And even if there is a code, a vibration, a mission embedded in the time you arrived in the world, this mission only fully reveals itself when you begin to live with truth. So, stop comparing yourself, of feeling late, to judge yourself for not having followed the expected paths. You came into the world with a time of your own, with a language of his own, with a calling that perhaps no one else understands, but that is yours. Sacred. It is possible. And now that you've lived so long, that you've fallen, you've gotten up, you've seen yourself in front of the mirror on dark days, perhaps you are closer than ever to hearing that call clearly. Perhaps now is the time to use the soul code not as a boundary, but as a guide. You didn't come into the world by chance. But it didn't come ready either. He came to discover himself, to get lost, to break, to remake yourself. And in this process, go beyond everything that has been determined. Because the true time of the soul is not in the past, nor in the calendar, it is in the now. In what you do with what you feel. In what you choose with what hurt you. What you dream of, even with fear. The instant of birth was only the opening. But life is all yours.